for our guest today. Her name is Michelle Glass. She owns a financial planning firm that specializes in retirement income planning for women. And she's been an advisor for almost 2 decades. And she's on a mission to help women retire confidently. And that's so important because what I believe and what she believes is that retirement planning actually starts with your first paycheck. So she's going to talk all about that today. Thank you, Michelle, for being here. Let's get into it. Right. Thanks, Michelle, for being on. So, to kick us off, take us back to where you were for our listeners in college and then getting your first job. What was your degree? What was your first job?
Sure. First of all, I will say I am so happy to be here. I think what you do, college to career with confidence, I think it's so extremely important. And as I'll share throughout our conversation, I could have used some help or focus like this when I was in college and getting my job. So when I was when I was in college, um, my major was business with a minor in marketing.
Mhm.
So I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I knew that business and marketing were kind of generic catch-alls for
Yeah.
me. So that was as broad as I could go, yet have a business background and have a degree that would
Mhm.
work for me. So
Yeah.
I loved the classes. I liked learning about, business and how it worked and building businesses and marketing. And I loved meeting people. So it was a great major for me.
Wonderful. And then what did that where did that take you for your first job?
So I kind of fell into my first job, and I'll explain. I went to meet a friend. We went out after college graduation and we were talking about the job search
Mhm.
and how it was going and different stories and interviews and all of that. And she referred me to her father. Now, her dad was a physician in our local town, and he was a busy guy. I knew him from being at it, at her house and hanging out with her. And out of respect for my friend, I called him and I had no idea where the phone call would go or what would happen, but I called her father. The next thing I knew, I was on a flight. I was flying to Chicago for an interview with Pfizer for a job in pharmaceutical sales. So,
Oh,
yeah, so it was strange
big
how it
name.
worked out. Like I said, I called him out of respect for my friend. And next thing I knew, he referred me to the job that I had for maybe 10 or 11 years. He referred me to
Yeah.
the person that hired me.
That's a big name company to start with, but that's something that I always say. That's one of the best pieces of advice I actually got at this stage in my career was always say yes to that first meeting because you just don't know where it's going to lead. It's actually where I got my dream job in New York City from is because I said yes to a first phone call. So kudos to you for reaching out and having the courage to do that. That's amazing.
And like I said, I
Mhm.
had no idea where it would go, but I did it. And
Yeah.
as I look back like at my life, a lot of things played out that way for me. I didn't, necessarily know the answer or the path. And I'd love
Mhm.
to say I had this all calculated and all mapped out, and this is where I wanted to go, but it wasn't. It was just fortuitous that it worked out this way.
Yeah. Well, keep going. What was the rest of your career path like?
So I ended up staying with Pfizer for about 10, 11, maybe 12 years. And when I first got into the job,
Mhm.
and maybe for several years after I had gotten the job, I absolutely loved it. Pharmaceutical sales at that time was kind of like a almost like a dream job. And I always had people asking me, can you get me in? Can you get me a job? Can you get me an interview or something like that? It was like the place to be.
Mhm.
And like I said, at first I loved it. It was exciting, it was challenging, it was interesting. But then over the years, and I don't know why or how this happened, but over the years I grew just to dislike it, almost to hate the job. And I hate to say that, but I grew to dislike it. Um, my heart wasn't in it. I wasn't passionate about healthcare. I wasn't passionate about disease prevention. And I realized that is very important, but that wasn't my world. But I stayed there for 10 or 12 years. And then, like I said, about 10 or 12 years in, Pfizer went through a layoff and they laid off thousands of people in this one round of layoffs. And luckily, I was one of them.
Mhm.
So it was wonderful how it worked out. So they laid off, like I said, thousands of people. I was one of them. And I was fortunate enough that at the time, everyone who was laid off was given a severance package.
Mhm.
And I say that because that gave me the luxury of looking for a job that I wanted, not that I needed. So I was very fortunate because I could pay my bills and I could take time to look, and I didn't feel like I had to take anything that came along just to make ends meet. So I was very
Mhm. Good. And where did you end up? What was the one that you wanted?
well, so it's interesting. I didn't realize what I wanted, but I knew when I interviewed that the position, whatever the, different jobs, because I went on several interviews, nothing felt really right. I didn't think to
Mm.
myself, gosh, that sounds amazing. And so while I was unemployed, I'll give you a little backstory here. It pertains to how I got my job.
Okay.
So I'm an only child, and my dad died many years ago. So it's just my mom and I. And for years, I had gone with her, I don't know, to see an attorney to get her will done, or I'd meet with her and her financial advisor. I just, did it to support
Yeah.
my mom and to learn. And my mom's financial advisor met with my mom while I was unemployed. And she said, how is Michelle doing? What's she doing? How is her life? And my mom said, well, she was just laid off. Well, um, that advisor called me. We met for lunch, talked about the world of financial planning, investments. And when I talk about a job feeling right, that job felt right. And I took it.
Mhm.
And so it's been almost 2 decades now. I've been in that world and
Mhm.
I loved it.
Very serendipitous.
And it's just, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of things kind of fell into my lap. I'd love to say I had everything calculated and planned out, but I didn't, Brianne. It was very fortunate how it played out.
Well, it seems to me, and I'm going to skip ahead in my questions just a bit here. It seems to me that you were able to secure these things with people who were acquaintances, your friend's dad or your mom's financial advisor. You meet them and they want to hire you, and it's probably what I'm assuming because you have this emotional intelligence. There's a lot to that in meeting a person. Would you agree with that?
So I would say yes for the second job, and I would say not as much as I should have had for the first job. I think the first job was all about ambition. I just graduated from college. I'm ready to
Mhm.
tackle the world.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of know everything. So I was very ambitious and very hungry. And I think that's what came across in the pharmaceutical sales
Mhm.
interview and the job. So, um, and while I was mature for a college graduate when I got my first job, I didn't have the emotional intelligence. I didn't have that piece. Like I look back and I wish I would have.
Well,
So
that's a good lead in. I think a lot of people, myself included, when you're in college and you have kind of no idea what this real world entails, what was something now looking back, whether it's that time where you're getting the job or your time at Pfizer, what was maybe something that was the biggest surprise for you entering the workforce after college?
it was how little I knew about the real
Mhm,
world because everything in college, at least for me, I'm not saying for
mhm,
everyone, for me, it was all book knowledge. Let's take this test, let's do
mhm,
this paper, let's have this exam. Did you read the work required? It was all about book knowledge, which I had, but I didn't have, the soft skills
mhm,
or the emotional intelligence that you need um, to succeed and I think truly connect with
mhm.
people. So it, there's just, I think for me, there was a big gap between reality and what I learned in college.
So if you could go back and talk to your younger self during that time, what would you tell her?
Well, I would tell them a couple things. First of all, just kind of relax and
Mhm,
calm down. Remember being I remember being so excited to conquer the world, right? And I don't want to take away that ambition or that hunger, but I would relax a little bit and just have relaxed and enjoyed the moment more.
mhm,
The other thing that I kind of wish that I knew and or I wish someone would have told me at the very beginning, not several years in, was the importance of being your authentic self
mhm.
and making true connections with people. And I that's really important and I think I wish I would have learned that sooner.
Well, let's go back to what you said. You said that you did feel like you had that emotional intelligence going into the financial advisor job conversation. What does that mean to you?
Um what it meant to me, I think, is that I'm aware of who I am as a person. I'm confident in what I do, who I am, what I believe in. But I think it also means for me understanding and controlling and using my emotions.
Mhm.
So I didn't I would I would know what an emotion was if I was angry at someone. I knew what it meant to be mad at them, but
Yeah.
I didn't take it and I didn't know how to translate that or move on from it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think that's what I learned is how to speak to people and use your own emotions and kind of, calm them, control them, direct them
Yeah.
to make that connection.
And that's not something that students get in their education. Like you said, it's all, it's book knowledge. So, what is your recommendation for young women to learn this side of the emotional intelligence skill set?
I think for me, in the last couple years, what's been extremely beneficial for me is meditation, but also journaling. Journaling
Mm.
has been huge for me over the last couple of years. And what's interesting, I had someone tell me or teach me or tell me to do um, and a thank you letter to the year.
Oh, okay.
So I do this every year. Like I just looked back on 2024 and I'll look at good and bad, but the thank you
Mhm.
letter is to the bad.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, it's amazing when you do it. It's really empowering. So, if you have and I'm making some of these situations up, but if you have a
Sure.
run-in with a colleague or a colleague or a friend betrays you or something, God forbid, but these situations happen in business
Sure.
and life. Um, so I look at what happened and I'll say, well, my colleague John, you know, I don't know, didn't like my comments at the meeting. And he said this really catty reply and it made me look silly or something like that. And then I'll go to, well, why does that matter to you?
Mhm.
And it matters because I don't want people to think that I'm, not good at what I'm doing or don't know what I'm talking about. Well, why does other people's opinions matter to you? Well, when I think about it, other people's opinion shouldn't matter
Mhm.
with what I'm doing. And and so I asked myself a series of questions like, why does this matter? Why did I care? And over the course of answering the or asking these questions and then writing them down, I end up realizing that what happened in that meeting with John was a blessing and that I learned when this situation happens in the future with this type of person, these are the things that I can do.
Mm.
It's been amazing. It's
Yeah.
so I like let go of the negativity and I'll realize that it wasn't negative, it was a positive. There's no kind of win or lose, it's win or learn.
Mhm.
And that's what that does for me. So I think meditation and I think journaling, where you just kind of get quiet and get calm. And I know you meditate.
I
So,
do. Every morning I make sure, and it's not very long. It's only about 5 minutes, but it
yeah,
changes my day. I have more energy. I'm in a more optimistic mood. It's amazing.
it's absolutely amazing. So I would
Mhm.
definitely recommend that.
Mhm.
Young women out there because I think you get to know yourself. And I think, it really sets the stage for the day.
Mhm.
Meditate at the beginning of the day, journal at the
Mhm.
end of the day,
Right.
so you can look back on what you learned, what happened, and just kind of channel your emotions and kind of change how you see things.
Yeah, those are great exercises for self-awareness,
Yeah.
self-regulation. How do I handle these feelings next time? Even social skills development. So I love that. I think I might steal your thank you to the year practice.
I can't take credit for it, but I'll tell you, it works wonders when you look back on, the things that have happened over the year, and there's always good and bad, and hopefully the good
Hmm.
outweigh the bad, but you've got to learn from those situations.
Right, right.
And it's a great way to let it go and move on and learn a lesson from it. So yeah, absolutely use it. I think you'll love it.
Perfect. All right. So, something that's so important at this stage for our listeners is setting a financial foundation. And that's what you're so good at. I know that you are helping women over 55 with their retirement, but from my experience, what I've learned in, reading books and podcasts is actually you have to set up the foundation now when you're getting your first job, when you're starting to do things with your own money.
Yeah.
Talk us through why this is so important for the women that are just coming out of college and getting their first jobs.
Yeah. So a one word answer for that is time. So the sooner you start, the longer you have to save and invest and let that money grow. And I will tell people if you start saving and paying yourself first when you're in your early 20s, just out of college, your first job, if you do that, Brian, you have the power to be wealthy, not just comfortable someday, but you have the power to be wealthy. And I think it's really important because I think the more money that you have, the more freedom and choice that you have. Not that money is good or bad. It all depends on what you do with it. But the more you have, the more freedom you have to make different choices. So, absolutely, straight out of college, your first job, absolutely, you need to start saving. And the sooner you do it, the better.
When you say start paying yourself first, what does that mean?
So I think we hear that all the time, pay yourself first. And I think
Mhm.
I think it's kind of a generic, um, I don't know, piece of advice. Pay yourself first, though, means kind of treat your own saving, your own life, your own future, and your retirement. Treat that as an obligation or a bill and something that you have to do every month. I have to pay myself $100 every single month into an emergency fund.
Mhm.
I'll pay myself first with my company 401k because they offer a great match. So it I'll contribute to the 401k up to the match to get the free money. So
Mhm.
it means almost making it like an obligation, but putting yourself first. Don't say, well, I'm going to pay, my I don't know, Amazon bill, then I'll pay, everything at Sephora and all of these other places. And then whatever's left over, if it's $10, that's my savings, right? So pay yourself first. And then with the money that's left over, that's where you can go out with friends or go, shopping or do those things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I want to dig in even further because I feel like there's just so many things that we could or we should be doing with our finances. So, let's pretend I am just getting my first job and I'm just about to get my first paycheck. What are maybe the top 3 or 5 things I should be considering at that point when it comes to my finances?
First of all, you need to understand your first paycheck, how much money is coming in every month, what's going into your bank account. And not only what's going in, equally, maybe more importantly, is how much is going out. Because if the money going out is more than what's coming in, you are going to rack up credit card debt. You're going to be in a world of trouble if what's going out is greater than what's coming in. So you have to understand those two variables. You have to look at your cash flow. That's really important. I think the other two things that are really important for your first job, your first paycheck, you're just out of school, um, find out about your employer sponsored retirement plan. A lot of companies offer them, some may not, but if they offer them, go to school on the details of the plan. How does it
Mm.
work? What does it mean? So you need to understand the ins and outs of your retirement plan. And I think the third thing that's really important, especially for someone who's never had a job but is now getting one, um, is setting up an emergency fund. We all have those, rainy days that happen, and you don't want something like, I need new tires on my car or my renter's insurance is due. You don't want something like that to derail your plans, or you don't want to have to put that stuff on a credit card and pay, I don't know, 20% more for it than maybe you should have in the first place.
Right. Okay, so recapping, what's
Yep.
going in, what's going out,
Yes.
checking on your retirement plan options,
Yep.
and then your emergency savings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and I'm going to go back to the employer sponsored retirement plan. It's very important to understand how it works.
Mhm.
Do they offer a Roth option? Obviously, there's probably a pre-tax option. What are the investment options? What does that mean if you invest in a
Mhm.
target date fund? What do all of those things mean? How can I get the money out if there's an emergency? So I think you need to learn all of the rules and the details surrounding those plans. And I'm going to back up and So, you had asked for the top 3. I'm gonna add the 4th, okay? I think the 4th thing that's extremely important, in the world of retirement planning, it's probably the foundation or the basis of a solid financial plan, and that's the protection of your assets. So, that's a very fancy way of saying, do you have life insurance? Do you have disability insurance? Do you have um, a will or a power of attorney? Because God forbid, if you were in a little fender bender on your way home from work, you would, as an adult now, you would need a power of attorney so that someone could act on your behalf and, inquire on, about your insurance or talk to the doctors. That would be a healthcare power of attorney. And I'm not an attorney, I always give that disclosure, but you wanna make sure that, um, you have protections in place.
Mhm. Okay.
So that's crucial.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense. I mean, that's maybe not exactly financial, but if you're renting an apartment, which a lot of people at this age are, do you have renter's insurance, your healthcare, your car insurance, all that stuff is buttoned up, gotta have it. And
Yep.
all of that's in addition to the things that you mentioned. So there's a lot of things to do to get your foundation in place.
It is. I think it can be overwhelming, and
Mhm.
it's also not like the fun, sexy, exciting stuff, so people don't wanna talk about, "Hey, I'm getting a will,"
Yeah.
or they don't wanna talk about life insurance or disability insurance, but I think, again, you wanna make sure that in the event of a catastrophe, and we've all seen these things happen to someone we know, right? We just wanna make sure that our assets and our lives are protected with these
Mhm.
different mechanisms.
Yeah. And you use the word overwhelming. And I want to go back to whether it's a 401k or an IRA or whatever it is that you're using for retirement. Every Gen Z that I've talked to, and it's not just Gen Z because I did it too, but I literally say, okay, tell me about your experience with the 401k. And they said, well, I set it up, I have it, and I had to call my dad to see how to actually use it. And I did it. But what I would love to do is get to a place where, women especially, but every young person is confident going into that. And we don't have to rely on a man or a parent to set this up. And it's okay to ask for help. That's not what I'm saying. But, and I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. If you go and your workplace has a 401k, can you just give us kind of the 30 to 60 seconds of what do I need to do to get that up and going?
So usually when you are completing your employment forms, when you first get your job, they'll throw a million forms at you, one of which is the employer-sponsored retirement plan. And it will say, you can contribute from 0 to whatever the percentage is of your salary. And and you make those elections when you first start working. You can obviously ask HR for help, but I think something else that would be beneficial would be to either go to the provider of the company, whomever um, is the provider of your
Mhm.
workplace retirement plan, and you can ask them general questions. What does a qualified bucket mean? What does a Roth option mean? What does after tax mean? I think you can ask all those questions. You can also get what's called a summary plan description, or SPD. Every retirement or employer account has one that highlights the or summarizes the plan.
Mhm.
And I think you can look through that. And if there's words or ideas or strategies in there that you don't understand, Wikipedia is a good place to look for financial. information, or and I guess it's Investopedia. But you can always get answers that way. Yeah, it would be great if everybody knew or had access to this information. I think it's slowly changing,
Mhm.
but I think there's still a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. Investopedia is a good one. It's, if you need something explained, like what is a Roth mean, that is something that you can look up and find. And I think that's great because that was a question I had.
Yeah, and you're right about, I think going to your dad or going to your uncle or your brother, and we see people do that all the time. Um, and certainly we encourage you to get help, just like you
Mhm.
said.
Mhm.
I think too, spend a little bit of time yourself.
Mhm.
Just spend some time Googling all of these different answers. And it, I would probably recommend double checking what you hear from, your friends or loved ones, right? Just to be on the safe side, but you can absolutely get some good information and learn from those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just really educating yourself, like if your parent or whomever tells you something that just it seems to be like, okay, I've signed up now and now I've kind of forgotten it. When I got really comfortable with this stuff is when I started educating myself. So I read books on it, I listened to podcasts. Now I know the terminology. I can make tweaks to what I want for my own self, not just what I've been told. So that's something that I would encourage people to do too, is just start learning, start listening or ingesting that information so that you start to feel comfortable with that.
And, that's absolutely key because I think going back to the emotional intelligence piece by doing the reading or listening to the podcasts or, just spending an hour Googling something,
Mhm.
you obviously learn a ton, but I think your confidence and grows, and you feel so much more empowered when you have that knowledge. So it ties back to the emotional aspect of it because you feel confident, but you also know that you're doing something to take care of your future self.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, it's important.
Mhm. Well, I'm going to end this interview by asking you if you could go back and give yourself, as just coming out of college, one piece of advice, what would you tell her?
I think it would be to just kind of relax. Life has a way of working out. It doesn't Not everything has to be planned out step for step for step. When I look at my life, my first job, my second job that I've been doing for almost 2 decades now, they both fell into my lap, and it was exactly looking back, it was exactly what I needed at the time. So because I was, open enough to receive that, it those 2 things completely changed my life, but it wasn't according to plan.
Well, Michelle, this is such an important topic. I'm so appreciative that you were willing to come on and talk to the listeners about getting a financial foundation in place, how EQ has come into play in your career and how it can come into play in theirs. So, if anybody wanted to connect with you, where can they go?
They could go to LinkedIn. My name is Michelle Glass, and the company is Glass Financial Advisors.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. The work that you're doing, it's so important. So, thank you.